Paul is first one up. He says, "Hi guys, I think Lisa Allen's RSS Authority Sniper came out after you finished the IFTTT V2 training. So could you show the best way to use a blended feed with your money site in it to your Tier 2 network? An idea of how the recipes would look like to Tier 2A, B, and C with an RSS feed created from RSS Authority Sniper. Thanks for all your good information and courses." Paul, I haven't used Rank Feeder, the feeds that you create with Lisa Allen's product. I haven't used it for syndication. I've used it for submitting to directories and aggregators, just as for additional SEO. I haven't used it for syndication. You certainly can. There's no doubt. So without testing it, though, without actually playing around and testing with it, which is what I would recommend that you do, Paul, because I don't know how soon I can get to that, but what I would do is, what I'm curious about is when you put a sticky item in, for those of you that aren't aware, with Rank Feeder, which is Lisa Allen's product, which is really, really good, you can create RSS feeds, and you can create RSS feeds from anything that even has a web URL. You can add that to a created feed, and then you can submit the feed to directories and aggregators. You could also use it for syndication. It's not something I've tested yet, however. But what's cool about it is you can create RSS feeds from other RSS feeds, right? But you can insert single URLs into the feed and make them sticky. In other words, you can make them a part of the output of the RSS feed at all times, which is important because if you guys know, when you're publishing content, as soon as you publish a new post, that's going to push that previous item down one in the feed. And if, let's say that your feed is only showing 10 items, then by the time you get to the 11th post, it's going to push that first post off the page, right? So it's no longer in that feed, is my point. And so with the sticky items, you can take a YouTube URL, a single post URL, you can do anything, a page. It doesn't have to be a post, it can be a page, it can be anything, and you can create insert it into the feed and make it stick to where no matter how many other posts come in to that blended feed or spliced feed, that one item is going to stick. And you can have multiple sticky items in the same feed, in fact, but that one item will always be there. And why is that important? Well, because if you take that RSS feed and now you syndicate it or submit it to directories and aggregators, and every time new content gets published, whether it's your own content because you have some of your own feeds spliced into it, or other content from other sources, which I recommend using related high authority content sources. So every time that any one of the feeds that make up the overall feed. All right. So my point was with the RSS feeds, anytime somebody any content is published to any of the feeds that make up that are spliced together to make up the overall Rank Feeder feed, it's going to signal the bots to crawl it again, right? So it's basically like pinging the feed. Every time the feed gets updated, it pings again, and it causes the bots to come crawl it again. And what happens is the sticky item, that's what's known as co-citation, because now that one sticky item, or multiple sticky items if you choose to do so, is going to always be associated with content around that topic. And every time that feed gets crawled, that one item or multiple sticky items are going to continue to be crawled again, and that association is made, and that's called co-citation. It's very, very powerful. So now for Paul's question, I have not actually tested syndicating with a Rank Feeder feed. I don't know what that looks like yet because I haven't done it. So I'm almost certain that you can select the feed to publish either the full text post or snippets. So I'm assuming it would work well, because I know, like for YouTube, for example, if you pull in YouTube, it actually will create the full feed with the embedded video in the feed output, which is something that ever since YouTube got rid of the old RSS feeds within YouTube, that was a function that was no longer available to us. And so I know, like, you can do that with the Rank Feeder feed, but as far as syndication, I haven't done it yet, Paul. So the question that I have about that is, if it has a sticky item, every time a new item gets inserted into the feed through just whatever the feeds are that are spliced in there, will that sticky item republish? I'm curious. I don't know. So to answer your question, I don't have any tips for you yet. What I would do is test them, and I would want to make sure that the sticky item doesn't get republished. I don't think it will, but I don't know that for sure. And without testing it, I can't be for sure. Okay, so I would want to check to make sure that the sticky item doesn't get republished. Number one. Number two, if it doesn't and it works that way, then I would say you could always put in the sticky item. See, again, I haven't done any syndication with it, so really just to kind of move beyond this, without any testing, Paul, I don't have any advice for you yet. I would set up some testing on your own first to confirm that, and then if the sticky item does not publish a second time or a third time or whatever, if it doesn't continuously republish, then you could just put a sticky item in the feed and use it for just another feed source, a content source for your tier 2 triggers, which is what we talk about in the tiered network training anyways, right, is to splice or to create or to go locate additional related content feeds and create triggers on tier 2. Well, you could do that with a blended feed or a splice feed. However, remember, keep in mind that any feeds that you splice together into a rank feeder feed, you want to make, if you're going to use that spliced feed as a syndication trigger, then you got to make sure that all of the inputs, so all of the feeds that you're using to create that splice feed, have attribution already coded on their side. So in other words, it already has an automatic attribution link. If it does not, then I wouldn't recommend doing it, because when you start syndicating content without an attribution feed, that's essentially there's some copyright issues that you could deal with. How do I know this? Because we've had students that didn't adhere to what we teach on how to make sure there's always an attribution link, and then they would get cease and desist orders from the blogs of the content they were syndicating, and then obviously that scares people. Well, it should. It's copyright stuff, right? So just make sure that if you're going to use a spliced feed for syndication, all of the inputs have to have an attribution link coded in automatically. If it does not, then you would still have to set up individual triggers for each feed, because then you could code the attribution link into the feed through the IFTTT recipe itself. That makes sense. So hopefully again, Paul, I would just do some testing on your end, and that's why, you guys, you should have at least one test network set up for stuff like this, exactly like this, so that you can just play with different recipe configurations and things like that. All right. Excuse me.